Hey guys, I got a word from the Lord here for you. I'm going to go ahead and give my citations. I've taken maps from mapsopensource.com. I've taken some of my exhibits from the Rose Book of Bible Charts, Maps, and Timelines. And I've taken a picture out of the Jewish Encyclopedia published in 1906. I'm going to go ahead and give you the word of the Lord. If you haven't watched my previous videos, it will help you to better understand the things I'm saying. If you watch all the videos, watch them in sequence. The first two are critical to understanding pretty much anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up here on the screen and give it to you guys. The unknown second coming of Jesus, part 5. The 12 tribes of Israel are Jacob's 12 sons. The 12 sons lived as a family in the land of Canaan until Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. Years later, the family would end up together again in Egypt and eventually became slaves to the Egyptians. After many years, God would send Moses to bring Israel into the land of Canaan, otherwise known as Israel. Israel initially was under judges for a period of time until they asked God for a king. God granted the request and gave them a king. For a time, they were a united monarchy with all 12 tribes under one king. Solomon, which was David's son, was the third king of Israel. He sinned against God, and for his sin, God punished him by taking 10 of the tribes from him. Joseph would represent Israel and the 10 tribes, and Judah would represent Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. From then on, they would be known as two separate families or kingdoms. They had two separate capitals. Israel had its own capital in Samaria, and Judah had its capital in Jerusalem. In 721 BC, the house of Israel went into Assyrian captivity as punishment for sin and never returned to the land. Judah went into Babylonian captivity in 586 BC, but returned once the punishment period ended 70 years later. Some returned sooner, but the 70-year period was fulfilled, and they stayed until the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. Some of Judah have returned now since the 1800s, but the major part of Judah and the rest of Israel are still not in the land of Israel. Jesus came to Judah at the first coming, and Jesus comes the second time to Joseph. With this in mind, let me give the word of the Lord. I put in here a very basic outline. It shows the different it shows the families of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name was eventually changed to Israel. These are known as the 12 tribes. It shows you how the Jacob's different sons and who the mother that they're born to. I just put this in here to give an outline and help everybody understand that maybe doesn't know that much about the history of the children of Israel. And so now let me go on to this next thing here. Matthew 24. For as lightning comes out of the east and shines even into the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Jesus comes the first time to the land of Israel in the east as the lion to the tribe of Judah. He comes the second time as the stone to the tribe of Joseph in the west. Both of these advents are shown in Genesis 49. Matthew shows that the coming of the Son of Man comes out of the east and the west. Israel is on the eastern part of the globe. Here in North America, the last place that the tribe of Ephraim migrated to once they left Israel, we are known as the West. He comes out of the east and shines to the west. I put this map up here of the world. It basically, if you look at the prime meridian, the equator, you look at the position of Israel on the map, and you realize America is west of Israel and it's north of the equator. America officially had its beginning in July of 1776. So this really doesn't need any explanation here. This is how maps are laid out, and anybody just a cursory view of it will show where the west is at and where the east is at. Judah is on the east, and if you look at this tabernacle drawing here and the different cardinal points, the north, south, east, and west, Judah's on the east. The tribe of Ephraim is on the west. The Holy of Holies is also on the west. And a man must travel west through the outer court to get to the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is where the hidden manna is kept by the two cherubim inside the veil that is 4.6 meters wide. Paul said these two cherubim are a mystery to him. Listen, anybody that wants to know the different modern day equivalents of these Old Testament and New Testament units of measure, you can get it from the Rose Book of Bible Charts, Maps, and Timelines. You can get it from some of the other Rose books. They have all the modern day equivalents. Okay, this is what Paul says here in Hebrews 9 about the cherubim that were in the Holy of Holies. Now remember, these cherubim, the two were made out of one piece of gold. And over it, the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. So to get to this mysterious set of cherubim, you must go west. Jeremiah 31, verse 7. Thus saith the Lord, sing with gladness for Jacob, shout among the chief of the nations, publish ye, praise ye, and say, O Lord, save thy people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coasts of the earth, with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travails with child. Together a great company shall return thither. They shall come with weeping, with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. The remnant of Israel are shown to be in the north country. God is speaking in verse 9, and he refers to Ephraim, and no mention here is made to Judah. Isaiah 49, verse 1. Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, you people from afar. The Lord hath called me from the womb, from the bowels of my mother has he made mention of my name. He has made my mouth like a sharp sword, and in the shadow of his hand has he hid me, and made me a polished shaft, in his quiver has he hid me. He said unto me, Thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. Then I said, I have labored in vain, I have spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with the Lord, and my work with my God. And now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God shall be my strength. And he said, It is a light thing that thou should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the ends of the earth. Skip down to verse 12. Behold, these shall come from far, these from the north and from the west. In the beginning of the 49th chapter, the isles afar off are mentioned, this being a reference to the British Isles. Britain is Joseph's other son, Manasseh. This is more than just a prophecy about the ones in the isles, because God's servant is a light to the Gentiles and salvation to the ends of the earth. The servant of the Lord in verse 2 speaks and says, in the shadow of his hand has he hid me, which means he is unknown. Further in the chapter, Isaiah says God's servant will restore the preserved of Israel. This is the second coming spoken of in Acts 3, when Jesus comes as the prophet Elijah to restore all things. Verse 12 shows that they must come from the north and from the west. This is like saying northwest in English. Hebrew has no such word, which is why it is written as north and from the west. The servant of the Lord is named Israel. According to verse 1, he has a mother. This proves he is born into a family at his second coming. Jeremiah 51:19 shows Israel, otherwise known as Jacob, is the Lord of hosts. And he is mentioned, by the way, in a prophecy to modern-day Babylon by the prophet Jeremiah, Babylon being America. One of the most amazing things about Isaiah chapter 49 is this. It is the servant of God that is named Israel. He comes at the time of the restoration, and he is God's salvation. This word is easily recognizable. It is Yeshua in Hebrew. Yeshua is the name of Jesus in Hebrew. God has identified this one that comes to the northwest named Israel. He's Jesus, Yeshua. The stone must come to the tribe of Joseph at the second coming, according to Genesis 49. Daniel 2 shows that the stone must be in Babylon, as the image that he smashed is a Babylonian image. Isaiah 14 gives us a clear picture that Satan comes as a man, and he is the king of Babylon, which is geographically in the sides of the north. He comes at the time when God sets them in their own land, which is what we saw in Isaiah 49. He restores the preserved of Israel. Isaiah 14 has this to say. Isaiah 14, for the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, from thy fear, and from thy hard bondage, wherein thou wast made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how has the oppressor ceased, the golden city? This map shows ancient Babylon is not north of Israel, it's east. The second coming, he comes from the north. Isaiah 41:25, I have raised up one from the north. He shall come. From the rising of the sun shall he call upon my name. He shall come upon princes as upon mortar, and as the potter treadeth clay. If you look at this map closely, you see that the portion of land that was allotted to the tribe of Ephraim, it has in it Bethel and Shiloh. In the previous video, I showed Jacob's pillow stone that he named God's house. This stone was a representation of Christ at his second coming. It had the total dimensions of 46 inches. This stone came from Bethel, which according to the map on slide 13, is in the portion of land given to Ephraim. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Jacob has the stone that is the God of God's house, and it comes from Ephraim. Remember in 1 Corinthians, that rock was Christ. That rock, this rock, Jacob's pillow stone, God. So it makes this God of God's house, and it comes from the tribe of Ephraim. It is no coincidence that the word Bethel carries the meaning God's house, house of God. You see right here in the Strong's Concordance, Beth El, the definition of the word house of God. It's a place in Palestine, but it's actually, it's more specifically in the tribe of Ephraim. Shiloh is also in the portion of land given to Ephraim in the map on slide 13. It was the place that Joshua set up the Tabernacle of Witness, Joshua 18. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. And the land was subdued before them. Shiloh was a name given for the Lord at his second coming. Genesis 49. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Remember, the servant of the Lord in Isaiah 14 is here when Israel is gathered. And according to Genesis 49, the gathering will be to Shiloh, the Messiah, at his second coming. God didn't put all these signs everywhere about Ephraim for naught. The creation shows the Creator, according to Romans 1:20. And we're looking at God's creation in these maps and the geography of his land. He makes things according to patterns, which show his advent to earth in human form. It's the glory of God to hide a thing, but the honor of a king to search it out. According to the law of Moses, there is a sin offering, Jesus at his first coming, and a trespass offering, Jesus at his second coming as the stone. There's one law for them both in Leviticus 7:7, which is death. Jesus came to the east at his first coming to pay for the sins of men here on the earth. He comes to the north and the west at his second coming to fulfill the trespass offering and atone for the sins of the heavens. This is all covered thoroughly in my previous videos, so I'm not going to recreate it all here. I'm simply pointing out the place where he comes, its position on the earth. Ezekiel gives us the answer. Ezekiel 46:19 and 20. And after he brought me through the entry, he's talking about the temple in the book of Ezekiel, the last 8 chapters here. And he brought me through the entry, which was at the side of the gate, into the holy chambers of the priests, which looked toward the north. And behold, there was a place on the 2 sides westward. Then said he unto me, This is the place where the priests shall boil the trespass offering and the sin offering, where they shall bake the meat offering, that they bear them not out into the utter court to sanctify the people. The trespass offering is boiled in the northwest. You see here the prime meridian. You see the equator. You see over in the east, on the east of the prime meridian, you see is Israel. On the west of the prime meridian and north of the equator, you see America, Babylon, the northwest. Revelations 22:16, I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright and morning star. Jesus calls himself the morning star, and in Revelations chapter 2, he promises to give the morning star to the overcomer. Revelation 14 bears out the same truth, as the new song is given only to the 144,000. The morning star represents his second coming. Venus is the morning star when it is west of the sun, as you look towards the sunrise in the morning, as observed from our point of view. Venus has a magnitude of 4.6 and a diameter of 12,112 kilometers, or just over 12,000 kilometers. The one Venus with a 4.6 magnitude, a diameter of 12,112. You see, witness after witness after witness after witness. Remember just as Jesus comes the first time to the east and the second time to the west, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. In Malachi 4, the Son of Righteousness arises, and that chapter is 6 verses long. The word son is a play on words. It's S-U-N. God is speaking here of his son, S-O-N. Malachi 4:2 is where that word is used, is the 112th verse that this word is used. The word son, S-U-N, in the Hebrew Old Testament. The 112:46, the sun arises. Here's the Strong's definition. The original word, you see down here in the usage byword, son, 112. So the word itself in the original Hebrew is actually used more than 112 times, but it's translated as this word S-U-N 112 times. Malachi 4:2, where the sun arises with healing in his wings, that's the 112th use of this word S-U-N. And it's obviously showing the S-O-N. Ancient Israel was commanded to pitch by their own standard, their flag, pitch their tent by their flag. The squares in this drawing here represent the tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, and their position around Moses' wilderness tabernacle. God was very specific. The laws were very strict. He laid out clearly the cardinal points and the positions of the tribes around the tabernacle. And this is what he says. This is where you, this is where you find the positions of the tribes around the tabernacle mentioned earlier. Judah is on the east by their standard, and Joseph, Ephraim, is on the west by their standard. Numbers 2:1. This is the scripture that where God gives this command to Moses. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard, with the ensign of their father's house, far off about the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. And on the east side, toward the rising of the sun, shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch. You skip on down to Numbers 2:18. On the west side shall the standard of the camp of Ephraim according to their armies. The standard of the camp of Judah is the lion. The standard of the camp of Ephraim is the ox. We know this because of what Moses said about Joseph. You read in Deuteronomy chapter 33. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord be his land for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, for the deep that coucheth beneath, for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, for the precious things put forth by the moon, for the chief things of the ancient mountains, for the precious things of the lasting hills, for the precious things of the earth and fullness thereof, for the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorn. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. Verse 17, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock. You see in the original Hebrew here what this bullock means. If you look on down at the end of the definition, it's ox. That's the sign of the house of Joseph, the ox. Solomon's temple shows time and manner in which God comes to earth. Remember, the servant of God in Isaiah is hidden. Solomon's temple was built quietly, and once the stones of the building were set in place, they were covered so that there was no stone seen, in quotation marks, there was no stone seen. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. That's 1 Kings 6. 1 Kings 6:18. This is the chapter where when Solomon builds the temple, and he says here, and the cedar of the house within was carved with knops and open flowers. All was cedar. There was no stone seen. Joseph is represented at the temple by his sign, the ox. This is 1 Kings 7. And he made a molten sea, 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all about, and his height was 5 cubits. And a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. Over here on the right, this is the artist's rendition of the one sea with the 12 oxen. I took this out of the Jewish encyclopedia. It was published back in the 1900s, early 1900s, 1906. And then next verse here, 1 Kings 7:25. It stood upon the 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, 3 looking toward the east. And the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. The one sea stood on the 12 oxen, and this bowl was 4.6 meters wide. Again, you got the 112:46. Ephraim migrated here to America. Here in America, we originally had 12 colonies. Delaware was part of Pennsylvania and not its own colony. We have now grown to be 46 states and 4 commonwealths. Remember his number, 11246. You see in this exhibit here, the sea, the bronze basin. It was used, the priest used it to wash themselves in the basin, purifying themselves before entering the temple. It was about 15 feet, it was about 15 feet, 4.6 meters across. It stood on 12 bronze oxen. The one sea sits on 12 oxen, and it's 4.6 meters wide. It is the sign of the house of Joseph. Amen and amen.